They said it. Now we speaking on it. Welcome to the Telescope channel.
Hey guys, Mr. Telescope here. You're watching the Telescope channel. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I want to tell you to like, I want to tell you to subscribe. If you choose to do so, I appreciate it. Continue to watch, man. I hope you guys have a blessed day today, and I hope you guys' families are straight, man. Most important thing I want to say to you guys, man, is always be safe and watch out for your family and watch out for the people that you contribute with or that you're trying to contribute to. You know what I'm saying?
You see that beautiful decorative.
Claiming that I committed PPP loan fraud.
And you can decide for yourself if giants are alive and well and living in the present day. You were in Afghanistan in 2002, and you were called into a very remote section of Afghanistan because a patrol had basically gone missing.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
there's no
Well,
villages
just
around
nothing
for miles.
Right.
So it's very remote.
Yeah, very remote. So we flew in. To about 4 kilometers. We're hiking through the same area where they were supposed to make one of their checkpoints, one of their rally points. And before we left, there was all kinds of what happened with the ambush, but that was even odd because at point of ambush, you would call for maybe close air support, something, okay? There was no calls made, just off the bridge. So we're coming down a mountainside, and it was a nice path, a goat path. As we bent around this corner, you could see this opening of the cave. There's a cave as we're coming around. And then I see there's a lot of rocks, which is another oddity, and then bone matter. I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see something I knew was a piece of our communications equipment. So instantly, we're thinking ambush, maybe animal, could be anything. And there was enough room in front of this cave, but it had a sheer drop-off. But there was enough room that we actually got into a decent dispersal in case of ambush.
You see something coming out of the cave, and it's moving with a speed and agility that catches you off guard.
Everybody. And he comes out. It was a man at least 12 to 15 feet in height. This is a monster. Red beard, then his hair was longish past the shoulder, a scarlet red, and Dan runs at him and starts shooting, which broke all of us into the reality. Because it was
So
surreal.
now your training is kicking in.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
muscle memory, complete muscle memory. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine's laying down fire and I start firing. He skewers Dan. He's now got him on this pike. It went through him. He's still got him, and he's coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we're all like, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. And our weapons components were in force. We had 308s, and we had Barrett 50s. This is sounding longer than it took. We're talking 30 seconds. And he's taking multiple hits, and is still moving.
He talked about this giant being 1,100 pounds anywhere from 10 to 15 feet long, and it was killed. It was apparently shot somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, but before it was shot, it lunged at several of our troops, our soldiers. It may have even gorged somebody. It was just a bizarre story, and it just sounds like the Nephilim from the Bible, doesn't it?
That's why we're so fascinated by this.
Dan was dead. Okay. And why, as a good man, probably one of the best men I know, now dead. Before I'd left, they were already starting what they call a 9-line, which is a medevac request. They're sending out a medevac request, then all of a sudden it's not a medevac request. All of a sudden we had a helicopter show up because, like I told you, it was a large precipice and a sheer drop. So the helicopter just came up from the drop. They had dropped netting, which is like cargo netting. It's like squares. We were told we had to bundle him up. And we get another bigger helicopter, but it's almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day that could get, through this area. Because the mountains, you gotta remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift. Mm-hmm. And so we got him on there. The thing was too big, we couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while.
Really fell.
Oh, it was like a combination because of the, how do you put that, the persistence of a skunk smell. But once the helicopter came in, dropped its little hook, and off he goes. The communication was sent out that we had a very large possible human creature.
There you are in the hills of Afghanistan. How many troop members are you with?
We had 6 on my crew. And when we say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base. I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. What I could see that it did have the 6 fingers. I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. We estimated at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing. Basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured it was around 1,100 pounds.
Of course we're upset. That's a given, okay? We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted.
How many fingers?
6. Oh, 6.
Six fingers
toes.
and 6 toes.
And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has, I don't know what it's called, but it's
Like a fungus on
the nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly. That's what they look like.
As we showed, while the shooter's story is certainly fantastic, it does corroborate Stephen Quayle's account that he published years before. And people have a right to know about this stuff. I mean, if there are 15-footers or 18-footers roaming the planet and our military has brought them down, I mean, we have a right as American citizens. I mean, this isn't classified military stuff. This is something that we need to know, and it points back to the biblical prophetic narrative. What are your thoughts on that?
I think here's my personal opinion. My personal opinion is if it points that the Bible's accurate, they don't want it. If it goes against Darwinian evolution, it's not to be spoken of.
So you're out in the boonies running around looking for high-value targets?
Correct. Okay. And we're doing those operations, and as we're getting into firefights, we're getting into different scrimmages, you want to put it that way, we would come back to the base and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first I didn't think anything of it, and then come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we'd heard that they had killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave, and it was common knowledge among the military to hear this.
Now, when you say common knowledge, what do you mean? I mean, how does that work?
Years later, to come to find out, when I had returned from Afghanistan and had met other military members that had not been there in the operations with me, if you would bring up the giant of Kandahar, they knew about it. When you first hear it, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke, this has got to be a hoax. But then after things go down a certain way and you keep hearing it, you start to realize it's not a joke. They kept telling us to keep our weapons high, which means normally it's 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, but they kept telling us to put it towards a man's head and put it higher. So we would question, why do they want us to shoot higher than a man's head?
That's bizarre.
It is.
Our contact said 2002 is when they shot this 15-footer or taller, and you're now in this, you know, in the service around 2005. This word has gotten out, and what I find interesting here too is that if you're going to create a hoax, I get that, but you got details: 6 fingers, red hair, double rows of teeth, 6 digits on the toes, and of course that brings it right back into what we hear about in the biblical prophetic narrative, specifically the Nephilim. Your thoughts?
I agree. I would tell you that when I was doing my time in the service, and the stuff I saw, some of it I couldn't explain, like lights in the sky during firefights, like orbs, or lights that would be the size of a softball that looked that size looking up in the sky but making weird noises. And even going to Iraq myself and being near Haditha Dam and seeing the prisoners underneath the dam, and the prisoners would scream and there'd be this awful feeling underneath the dam, and then later finding out in the Bible that an angel's locked underneath there, where it talks about.
And this Haditha Dam is the Euphrates.
Is Euphrates,
and there's
correct.
an angel supposedly locked underneath the Euphrates,
Correct.
which is released in the book of Revelation.
Correct.
That's bizarre. So you're actually at this site, and soldiers are being locked, imprisoned underneath the Haditha Dam,
Correct.
and they're freaking out.
They were freaking out. They said they could feel it. In fact, the people who would guard them would draw straws to see who would actually take them.
No one wanted to go down.
Nobody wants to go down. Going back to Afghanistan, we would hear these things. We would hear the locals talk about rumors of these giants.
What would the locals say? How would they talk about it?
They say that they lived in the caves and they would eat people, and
They were cannibals.
they were cannibals. And we, at the time, chalked it up to our United States' Bigfoot.
Howling like a war cry. He's got animal skins for clothes. He just looks super dirty. And he runs over to Dan to pull the spear out and probably use it again. And the rest of the team at this point has broken out of their shock of what they're seeing, and they start engaging this giant. And the giant didn't really have a chance to fight back, and in 30 seconds the giant is down too. So Dan's down and the giant is down. And the whole team is like, what just happened? So after the dust had settled and all the shooting had stopped, they went to check on Dan, and Dan had passed away. And so they called back into higher headquarters, and they're trying to describe what happened. A very large, possibly human creature.
Now don't forget, this guy was in Afghanistan himself. He knows how this whole thing operates and how the after event reports are submitted, and you know, he's really deep into the understanding of how this whole process occurs and how they denied it and made him rewrite the reports.
Through a projectile that hit Dan. And so they sent 2 helicopters out, one to retrieve Dan and the team, the other just to hoist up this very large human-like creature because they wanted to know what it was. And they struggled mightily to get the netting around this big creature. It ended up weighing over 1,100 pounds. It had 6 toes on each foot and it had 6 fingers on each hand. They load it up, they string it onto this helo, and it takes off. And the team gets into the other helicopter and they go back expecting to be debriefed as soon as they get back to base. The helicopter with the giant would fly to an airfield and they would meet up with a crew of a C-130, which is another big military aircraft. The pilot of that craft would publicly say that he remembers seeing a 12 to 15 foot tall giant person with 6 fingers on each hand.
This is obviously not the picture. They have no evidence of this. That's the problem. It was covered up, and all these things were covered up. And I understand to some degree why they did it, because it's so spectacular. Even the stuff I presented, I got to be honest with you, it was very, very poorly received. And once you get into that, it's just nothing more than arguments about something. Now, I had something I could hold in my hand. If they could have shown this and said, here, this is real, and here's what it is, and then they would have talked about it. Now, I have all the stuff, but I'm not allowed to show it. They won't look at it. They refuse to look at it at every single major university. Refuse because it supports this kind of stuff. They don't like this.
And six toes on each foot, and he would say that's what he saw, even though it was later redacted and made top secret. Mr. K and his team, they flew back to the base to be debriefed, and so they had to provide an after-action report. It's something done in the military. You go out, you do any operation, you come back, and you write up what happened. And so Mr. K and his team decided to just be honest about what they saw. And so they described it again in detail. 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. It came out, it threw the spear, it hit Dan. It's this horrible situation. And once they submitted it, their leadership said, you got to rewrite that. We're not going to accept that. So Mr. K said they ultimately rewrote it, and it just sounded like a typical engagement in the mountains with the enemy. And it was made top secret, and then they never saw it again. And that was it. Mr. K said that he and the rest of his team also had to sign non-disclosure agreements to...
This happens over and over and over and over, and people are fed up with it because it's really just... We're just fed whatever they want to tell us. Now, is that good for society? Sometimes I wonder. People seem to be perfectly happy deluded. They just like to go on about their daily business and have no, they think we're all from dead dust and don't worry about eternity and, all that stuff is nonsense. And I've just gone totally to the other side of that because I understand this stuff is not nonsense. Now, you can laugh, do whatever you want. I have the evidence to support and prove the things I say. These things are just they're not speculation. People are coming forward that are very, very, very credible. Very credible. And have been denied and dismissed and forced under coercion to lie and to omit things that are valid and of significance to everyone. I don't think that's right.
I know that was a lot to take in, Assembly. Let's breathe. Let's get back into it.
Free brief. This is by Stan's own admission. Again, this is low-hanging fruit. This is out there. Stan would say, sometimes the littlest idea that I will come in with will be like, hey, Jack, we should have Dr. Doom come back in the next issue, and then Jack will run with it. And then, there are interviews in the 60s before all this stuff mattered where Stan actually says, and sometimes Jack will even tell me what's going to be in the issue. But the point is, that was never how it was credited. It was all, there were sometimes when it was credited as ambiguously, this is by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and it didn't tell you who was doing what. But more often, you would have, written by Stan Lee, drawn by Jack Kirby, when what was going on was Stan and Jack would have some kind of conversation, which may well have been Jack just dictating what he was going to do and Stan saying, okay.
Great.
Jack went home and wrote the comic. He would he would also write in little margin notes saying, I think the dialogue here should maybe be like this, or this is explaining what's happening in this picture. He'd give those pages to Stan, and then Stan would read that and add in the dialogue and the narration. So the actual specific words were Stan. So he's definitely a co-writer on these comics. That's indisputable. But he's not the sole writer, and he's not the first writer. He's not the person coming up with the plot and the structure and the reveal and the character development and all of that stuff. That was whoever was drawing, and more often than most other people, that was Jack Kirby. So that over-crediting is the beginning. And once you start pulling at that thread, that's when you start finding out that, there's the possibility that this entire enterprise was built on a lie. That was built on the myth of this one singular creator who had the first ideas, knew the first principles, and then dictated them to others to just execute. That was the myth that Marvel perpetuated in so many words for decades, and still kind of does, to a certain extent.
Oh, I think it actively does. I think it actively does narrative of their movies away from licensing it to others to make. And that would have been a chance to correct it. That would have been a chance to say, okay, this is how it was shorthanded by others who aren't in the know. But instead, they continued to perpetuate this idea. And I think the key part is when you said creator. Because if you ask the average person about Stan Lee, they'll say he created, and then they'll go through the long list of the things which he so-called created, but he didn't. He was there as they were being created. He was part of a conversation about its creation, but he was not. He didn't walk in one day and go, "I have an idea. There's 4 people." You know, I mean, and that's where the fact that he was willing to accept the lie, that he was willing to stand by the lie, that's the part that's, I think, self-indicting. Rivalry, almost as though they were equals, between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And the more I find out about it, it was Stan Lee had the majority of the power in the relationship. And one of those things I think we can use as a measure of whether somebody is a true leader is whether or not they eat last. And, you know, that concept of true leaders eat last. And he ate first. And he got his part first. And I don't know that even if when you look at what the actual percentage of contribution was, this is not like George Lucas Presents, where he was, you know, this was his job. And I think that's cool, but I think that's where he's myth making of himself very successfully at the sacrifice of the creativity of others around him who are just desperate to break in and are willing to go into that almost kind of an indentured servitude kind of a system. Is that an overstatement?
Now that right there, that's what you call a do little twist, right? I got so much more to show y'all, man. Let's get back into it.
So fucking disrespectful. And so this guy's a piece of shit. I don't care who says they like him, who says it's not even close. So like, yo, I'm a comedian, you know, so Dave Chappelle says shit. Don't cancel Dave. He's joking. This man is talking some shit he ain't got no business talking about. His kids should not love him. He is a foul guy. And so Joe Rogan, Spotify, you gotta do the right thing. And I'm not about that. I'm not about stopping people's bag. I'm not about shutting people down. I'm not about bringing people. I'm not the guy. I'm not about the guy. I'm not the guy. I don't want him to go to jail. I want to catch him myself. I'm being honest with you. And I'm not the guy that wants to get people fired. Even if I went to a restaurant and the woman who served me or the guy was so rude, I'm not the guy to tell the boss, fire them. I want everybody to work. But this shit, I cannot believe that the shit he was saying on there, he's allowed to do that. I am Puerto Rican. They've been calling me nigga since I was born. Since I was born in the South Bronx. I grew up in a neighborhood 90% black. There's a big difference. I'm not a white guy. I don't know what you think for a second. Not for a second. It's amazing. And so I don't care what video. So this is horrible. And the shit he was saying on the 1 or 2, 3 clip, and I heard it. You know what I'm saying? And I've been watching because in our world of entertainment, there's a lot of people that tap dance around conversations. You know, I seen somebody. I seen one of the leaders in our community I heard him on the radio the other day, and he was tapped that, oh, I stay out of that. I don't know this, because they get scared of burning bridges or somebody's cool with him and they was about to give you a check. But right is right. Wrong is wrong.
Hey, what's going on, Sibley? Like, share, subscribe. Let's get it in, baby.